Sir, replied the Englishman, laughing, I am like my house, and do not do such things. No, the commission I ask is quite different. Name it, sir, I beg. You are the inspector of prisons? I have been so these 14 years. You keep the registers of entries and departures? I do. To these registers there are added notes relative to the prisoners? There are special reports on every prisoner. Well, sir, I was educated at home by a poor devil of an abbé, who disappeared suddenly. I have since learned that he was confined in the Château d'If, and I should like to learn some particulars of his death. What was his name? The Abbé Faria. Oh, I recollect him perfectly, cried M. de Baville. He was crazy. So they said. Oh, he was, decidedly. Very possibly, but what sort of madness was it? He pretended to know of an immense treasure, and offered vast sums to the government if they would liberate him. Poor devil! And he is dead? Yes, sir, 5 or 6 months ago, last February. You have a good memory, sir, to recollect dates so well. I recollect this, because the poor devil's death was accompanied by a singular incident. May I ask what that was? Said the Englishman with an expression of curiosity, which a close observer would have been astonished at discovering in his phlegmatic countenance. Oh dear, yes, sir, the Abbé's dungeon was 40 or 50 feet distant from that of one of Bonaparte's emissaries, one of those who had contributed the most to the return of the usurper in 1815, a very resolute and very dangerous man. Indeed, said the Englishman. Yes, replied M. de Baville, I myself had occasion to see this man in 1816 or 1817, and we could only go into his dungeon with a file of soldiers. That man made a deep impression on me, I shall never forget his countenance. The Englishman smiled imperceptibly. And you say, sir, he interposed, that the two dungeons were separated by a distance of 50 feet, but it appears that this Edmond Dantes this dangerous man's name was Edmond Dantes. It appears, sir, that this Edmond Dantes had procured tools, or made them, for they found a tunnel through which the prisoners held communication with one another. This tunnel was dug, no doubt, with an intention of escape? No doubt, but unfortunately for the prisoners, the Abbé Faria had an attack of catalepsy, and died. That must have cut short the projects of escape. For the dead man, yes, replied M. de Baville, but not for the survivor. On the contrary, this Dantes saw a means of accelerating his escape. He, no doubt, thought that prisoners who died in the Château d'If were interred in an ordinary burial ground, and he conveyed the dead man into his own cell, took his place in the sack in which they had sewed up the corpse, and awaited the moment of interment. It was a bold step, and one that showed some courage, remarked the Englishman. As I have already told you, sir, he was a very dangerous man, and, fortunately, by his own act disembarrassed the government of the fears it had on his account. How was that? How? Do you not comprehend? No. The Château d'If has no cemetery, and they simply throw the dead into the sea, after fastening a 36-pound cannonball to their feet. Well, observed the Englishman as if he were slow of comprehension. Well, they fastened a 36-pound ball to his feet, and threw him into the sea. Really? Exclaimed the Englishman. Yes, sir, continued the inspector of prisons. You may imagine the amazement of the fugitive when he found himself flung headlong over the rocks. I should like to have seen his face at that moment. That would have been difficult. No matter, replied de Baville, in supreme good humor at the certainty of recovering his 200,000 francs, no matter, I can fancy it. And he shouted with laughter. So can I, said the Englishman, and he laughed too, but he laughed as the English do, at the end of his teeth. And so, continued the Englishman who first gained his composure, he was drowned? Unquestionably. So that the governor got rid of the dangerous and the crazy prisoner at the same time? Precisely. But some official document was drawn up as to this affair, I suppose? Inquired the Englishman. Yes, yes, the mortuary deposition. You understand, Dante's relations, if he had any, might have some interest in knowing if he were dead or alive. So that now, if there were anything to inherit from him, they may do so with easy conscience. He is dead, and no mistake about it. Oh, yes, and they may have the fact attested whenever they please.